Hi everyone. A lot of my viewers constantly send me links to what's going on Twitter. I generally do have a look at them, but honestly, because of the toxicity of that platform, I generally don't comment. This clip that we're going to look at today is a little different, and it was actually posted by TV and radio presenter Jeremy Vine. Now, I've seen a number of his clips before and I fully understand his passion for cycling, but honestly his decision making isn't always on point when he's riding. This clip that we will see in a moment caught my attention because he was close passed by a driver of a black Hackney cab. I did ask for the unedited footage so I could do some analysis. He refused. He told me I was biased against cyclists, so I've got no option. I'll just do the piece with the footage that was presented. Let's have a look at it. As normal, I'm going to look at what all road users could have done to make this a non-event. There's no order of importance or blame with what I'm going to do. I'm going to start at the beginning and work my way through the whole clip. This clip actually happens in Kensington High Street in central London.
Okay, freeze it, look around. I've got to avoid that car in the left lane, which is parked, so I put my hand out to signal I'm in this lane. He doesn't like it. Why did you do that? Why did you close past me then?
Put your hand up, I think the game right.
No, you didn't. There's no right turn.
Tell me
Why you did it. You've got no right to do that, yeah?
You're right, you know that. You put your hand in the game right, I think.
No, you deliberately closed past me. Why did you do that? My film will show I was on a straight line.
You know, you should know better.
I'll send it to the police, mate, okay? You've got no right to do that, yeah?
You're right, you know that. You put your hand in the game right, I think.
No, you deliberately closed past me. Why'd you do that?
Now, the first thing that I noticed at the start of the clip was the cyclists position themselves over the stop line at the pedestrian crossing area. I understand why cyclists may wish to do this, so they can be seen by all the other motorists, but if pedestrian levels are high, this can impede people walking and it can increase risk. There wasn't anyone at the crossing this time though. I would also like to point out that the cyclist proceeding on red and amber at the start of the clip is also wrong. But again, this didn't pose any threat to anyone because the crossing was clear. However, if you do this at a road junction, it increases risk with the likelihood of someone jumping the lights from a different direction. Red and amber means get ready, green means go if it's clear. This is also a common trait of many motorists, so I can understand why some cyclists feel pressured into doing this. As soon as the cyclist spots the parked vehicle a little touch further up, he does a great job on dealing with a hazard. The taxi driver that we're looking at was also in the same lane as the cyclist and had to move out to the right. They also did a good job and held back and gave the cyclist room after a well-timed arm signal. I've seen a few comments where people have been quite critical of the cyclist moving out into lane 2 round the parked car, and I strongly disagree. My mindset is to always try and create the best flow for everyone, so if I see a cyclist in a similar scenario, I'll try and slow down and accommodate as soon as I possibly can. Try and adjust your speed and merge in turn until you're past the obstruction, then you can make progress if it's suitable. So most things up to this point have gone reasonably well, but it's now that it goes pear-shaped. When we see the cyclist is passing the parked vehicle, we can also now see the left lane and it looks really clear. If I was riding a bike, I would then reciprocate the good road use that the taxi showed and I would move back to the left and let the taxi driver get on the way. If there were further parked obstructions, I would happily stay in lane 2 and command my position, but this wasn't the case. Even though a speed ramp was used in the editing process to lessen the time we actually see the left lane is clear, you can still work out the distance between the first part vehicle and the next group of them. To do this, I use my normal method. I find marker points on the video and then use Google Maps and measure the distance. It's quite simple. You can have a go at this yourself, but what I estimated was the distance between the first parked car and the next group was between 125 and 130 metres, which is 410 to 425 feet. The cyclist's approximate speed can also be calculated by one of my normal methods. All I do, again, I look at the video, I count the frames, and we can actually measure the distance by these lines in the centre of the road. The long ones are 4 metres and the gaps are 2 metres. The cyclist looks to be travelling at approximately 6 metres per second. Now, given that the distance is in excess of 120 metres, what it was going to take was at least 20 seconds for the cyclist to then reach the next group of parked cars. And this was plenty of time to move back to the left, and the taxi had plenty of time to overtake. So what I'm surmising with this is the taxi driver was triggered because the cyclist didn't move back to the left, and their overtake was a form of retribution. This is also backed up with how they use their horn. The horn is used to make people aware of your presence, and it wasn't the case because the cyclist was showing plenty of sideways head movement. It was obvious that the cyclist knew the taxi was there. Even though the cyclist had made a poor decision by not moving back to the left, it doesn't give anyone the right to try and prove a point and increase risk. The most dangerous part of this overtake was the final part where the taxi driver cuts back into the left, and at this point they were very close. Even when the taxi driver was alongside the cyclist, I do think that they were closer than 1.5 metres. But with my knowledge of 360 cameras and how they distort distances, I actually don't think it was as bad as was made out. This is not an excuse though. The cyclist needs to be given much more space than the taxi driver gave them in this clip. The other thing that's a little disappointing for a balanced view is the way that the zooms in on the footage as the taxi is passing has been used to make things look worse than they actually are. This was why I asked for the unedited footage so I could make some proper calculations. Quite simply, if I was driving, I wouldn't have overtaken there, knowing the world. But if I was on my bike, I also would have moved back to the left in this scenario. Another thing that I would have done differently if I was riding, if I had needed lane 2 for my direction of travel or for my safety, if I had seen the taxi overtaken like they did, I would have moved at least to the left side of my lane to create a lower risk. We didn't see this from the cyclist, who was obviously well aware of the danger, but they were more interested in shouting, "What's your problem?"
I'm in this lane. He doesn't like it.
In my opinion, it was as if the cyclist was prime and ready for escalation. Quite soon a clip jumps to where the taxi had been held up by another set of lights, and quite quickly the cyclist catches up. And before we go into what's said, I'd just like to make this point. This is proof that no one is going to make much progress, especially in a busy city like London. These two are battling over a space which really didn't matter. A lot was made in the clip of what the taxi driver said, but I think he was expecting the cyclist to turn right, and he was just disgruntled that the cyclist didn't move back to the left. The taxi driver said, "You put your hand out and I thought you were going to turn right," which is a reasonable assumption if you're in lane 2 and you're not overtaking anyone. But before the taxi driver was able to respond, the cyclist said, "No, you didn't. There's no right turn." The video camera was then taken off the helmet mount, and I'm actually not sure why, because it was recording everything perfectly. This action is never going to have a calming effect in a potentially volatile situation like this, and most of you know my opinion on this. If you've got something that's worthy of reporting, just report it. There were other comments that don't affect my analysis whatsoever, so I'm not going to bother with them. But what I will say is I feel as though some of these comments have been twisted. I don't think the taxi driver was talking about himself. I think that they were talking about the cyclist. And if I'm correct, how does that sit with you with what I'm saying the taxi driver thought was going on? I'll leave that one for you to decide. To summarise, the taxi driver did get way too close to the cyclist, but the cyclist has also got things to work on. The pandemic of strapping a camera to the vehicle you operate, then doing what you can to capture that viral event, is the scourge of our roads. It affects road safety in a large way, as this behaviour is often copied and many incidents are actually created. Like I've already said, if I was riding the bike or driving the vehicle, this would have been a non-event. When a motorist passes a cyclist this close, there's real risk of serious injury or even a fatality. Motorists need to change their attitude towards cyclists and treat them like human beings instead of just an interference. This will take a lot of hard work from many people. I've said before that people with influence need to have a responsibility to do good, not just to chase views and adulation. And that's why I've decided to do this video. I'm probably not going to make, again, many friends within certain circles, but hopefully there's a couple of you out there that see the real message, that I really care about your safety. We need to be united in our goals, not dividing. We're all human and we all make mistakes, and we all need to work together to make this better. Keep safe, everyone. Hope to see you soon.